Number 5. My parents divorced when I was 15, and my brother and I went out of our way to express our hatred in the only way teenagers can, becoming bad kids almost overnight. We drank, smoked cigarettes and weed, and did anything we could to piss off and rebel against our parents. When I was 17 and our mom met her now husband that lived 3 hours away, we were ecstatic. Every other weekend she was gone and we had the house to ourselves. Our home quickly became the party house for both of our group of friends. One party was particularly epic. A friend had finally turned 21, so we had their birthday at my house. Our beer was legally purchased and there was a lot of it. We got crazy, broke walls, windows. One kid jumped in front of a moving car. How the cops never got called is beyond me. Some stupid skinhead junkies showed up with a friend who I bought pot from sometimes. I recognized a few of them from school, but there was one I didn't know who was particularly creepy and very into my best friend. He wouldn't leave her side. She'd walk away, he'd follow. He kept asking her where she was going after the party, wanting to know where she lived and where she worked. He must have given her his phone number at least a dozen times. He really creeped her out, and she ended up going to bed in my room pretty early in the night, just to get away from him. When the creepy guy and the other skinheads started shooting up meth at my kitchen table, I had enough and kicked them out. The party went on. By about 2 or 3 a.m., everyone was gone except 3 of us, who were staying the night. We were hanging out in the living room and the one girl still sleeping in the bedroom. We heard noises from my room a few times, but when I peeked in on my friend who was sleeping soundly, I thought nothing of it. I woke up on the couch the next morning to my brother asking why the front door was wide open. I had no idea. I knew for a fact that it was closed and locked when the last people left the night before. I woke my friend sleeping on the floor and asked them to start the cleanup and went to my room to wake up my other friend. There was a pile of dirty clothes on the floor that I knew for a fact were in my hamper before the party started. I later realized they looked as though they'd been slept on. After an initial round of cleaning up beer cans and cigarette butts, we made breakfast, and being teenagers started rehashing the glory that was the party the night before. Everyone wondered who the fuck the creepy guy was, so we called the friend who brought him. The friend didn't actually know him. They met earlier in the night at a different party, and he tagged along to mine. So I apologized, sort of, for kicking him out, but made it clear the skinheads were not welcome at my house again. I remember saying, at least them shooting up gave me the excuse to kick out the creepy dude too, since he came with you guys. The friend on the phone got quiet for a second, then said, he didn't leave with us. The guy went outside with them. I saw it, but they noticed a few blocks away that he wasn't in the car. They didn't know him that well, so why take notice, I guess. We theorized pretty quickly that the guy snuck back into the house but wasn't noticed, because there were so many people and likely slept on my bedroom floor, on a pile of my dirty clothes next to my bed. He must have crept out sometime after the rest of us fell asleep, leaving my front door wide open. Our theory was confirmed a few days later, when creepy guy started texting my friend and sent her a picture of her sleeping in my bed. He stalked her for a few weeks, but never managed to find out where she lived or worked. It stopped when she changed her phone number. Number 4. Okay, this isn't as bad as all the others, but it's still worth mentioning. I'm in high school right now. This happened about 2 months ago. It was a pretty hot day, so we were going to the 7-Eleven for Slurpees. My friend made me dress up so we could go to the mall afterwards, so I was wearing eyeliner, eyeshadow, just makeup in general. We were walking down the pathway towards the doors to the 7-Eleven when this man stopped us by stepping in front of me. He's about 6 foot, African American, and looked about 60 years old. He stood in front of us and began speaking. "How old are you, young lady?" he asked. 15, I replied. The first flag went off, and my friend pointed out that I stiffen up when people talk to me. My friend slowly took my hand and squeezed it to calm me down. "Well, girl, I like the way you walk, the way you look, and the way you speak. You could be my wife." The second flag went off. I gave him a tiny smile but said nothing. My friend stared at me, and a person came out of the door, so the dude was obligated to move. My friend, who was still holding my hand, began to walk inside and I followed along. After we went and bought our Slurpees, we went back outside, and he was gone. I was pretty shaken up at that, but My friend said that if he came around again, she'd help me through it. Number 3. I've been looking for a while. I've been tempted to write a few stories, but I'm a terrible writer. I've been roofied twice, stalked by a crazy chick, chased by a machete-wielding man, and held at gunpoint, so I've almost forgotten about this story until yesterday. This is really long, so sorry for that. This story takes place about 2 years ago in LA. I was 22 at the time. I met Rachel about 2 months prior to the incident, but we had hung out every day in that short amount of time. I can go on all day about how perfect she was, but you guys don't have time for that. Just know that besides being beautiful, smart, and spontaneous, she was also fearless. She made me go bungee jumping, bought a tarantula on a whim, and once made an entire bar erupt in cheers after breaking some dude's nose that had slapped her when she declined his request for a phone number. We never defined our relationship, but I guess you could say we were exclusive friends with benefits, as ridiculous as that sounds. But I think that's because we were having so much fun, so fast, that we didn't want to risk what we had, but we both knew our feelings ran deeper than that. This may be important later, I'm not sure yet. It was a summer night, and we had been at the beach for a bonfire with my friend Peter, his nephew Rick, who was only 2 years younger than him, and his nephew's girlfriend, but had to leave because alcohol was not allowed. It was already midnight, but we didn't want to call it a night, so we decided to go to Rick's house to play some beer pong. We arrived at Rick's house around 1 in the morning, and he motions us to wait in the car, as it seems that he and his girlfriend had gotten into an argument. 10 minutes passed, and I asked Peter to pop the trunk so I could get a beer from the ice chest. He does it, but almost simultaneously says, "She's still there?" He's looking in the rear-view mirror, so I turn and see what he's looking at, and it's a lady, several hundred feet down the street, just standing there but facing the other direction. He explains that she had been standing in the same spot directly below a streetlight since we got there. I continue out the car, get us beer, then close the truck when Peter and Rachel both say fuck and start laughing. I turn to find that she's still there in the same spot but now facing us. Weird, but whatever. I get back in the car, and we lose track of time talking about a planned camping trip, but it's now been about 30 minutes, and I need another beer. So I get out, and I see the lady, but now the streetlight she was under had gone out, and she was under another one a little closer to us. Now we can see this lady's face, and she's just looking down the street, emotionless, and with a blank stare. Now that was still weird, but we just got the green light to enter Rick's house, so we quickly forgot about it. Now we've been playing beer pong for about an hour, and we had completely forgotten about the weird lady outside, but we also ran out of beer, so we sent Peter to go retrieve the ice chest from the car. He comes back empty-handed saying, "Fuck that, I'm not going out there." We're confused for a moment, but look out the window to find that the streetlight she was under before had gone out, and now she was at the streetlight directly in front of the house and car. In our drunken state, we were laughing, giving Peter shit about being a bitch and whatnot, but it was actually pretty creepy. Rachel, being the badass that she is, says, "Move, pussies, I'll go get it." Not wanting to be outdone, I followed. We approached the lady, but she still didn't turn to face us. Rachel goes up to her and asks, "Sweetie, are you okay? Do you need help?" Nothing. Now, we are directly in front of her. Her eyes were glazed over, but she wasn't blinking, just staring basically through us. Rachel tries to communicate again, this time placing her hand on her arm. Nothing. At this point, we realize she needs help, so Rachel tells me to call 911. I take out my phone, and I'm about to dial but look up to see that the lady had turned her head to face me. I pause momentarily but decide to continue. As soon as I look down, I hear her scream, "No!" and she slaps the phone down on the floor. This had me shocked for a couple seconds, but I realized that she just now turned towards Rachel and is whispering something into her ear. I'm staring, still in shock, just watching her whisper to Rachel for what seemed like forever, but was probably only 20 seconds, before she just turns and runs off into the darkness. The police came, and I decided I'd let Rachel talk to them. I went inside, and Peter and Rick were cracking up. I did too. It was such a what the fuck situation that all I could do was laugh. We hear Rachel enter, and I go over to ask how it went, and she gives me a forced smile and just said, "Good. I'm kinda tired. Can you give me a ride home?" I was pretty buzzed, so I proposed a taxi because she seemed pretty adamant. We get to her apartment, and I ask the taxi to wait, but she quickly turns and asks if I didn't want to stay. Now I've stayed there before, but this time her eyes seemed to beg me, so I agreed. That was the last time I saw Rachel. Until last night. For the past 2 years, all I've seen from Rachel were texts on birthdays and holidays. I was confused for a long time, as I didn't know what happened. I mentioned earlier we had a camping trip planned, among other things, and we were pretty inseparable during that time, so I was at a loss for what had happened. Last night was the first time that made me consider that this event may have contributed to that. I was at a bar waiting for a friend to get off work when I hear someone call my name. It was Rachel. I was nervous, but when we began talking, it was just like before, until the inevitable, "I haven't seen you since" talk. I begin to retell the events of that night, and she gets quiet. It wasn't until I asked what the lady said to her that I realized this. She gave me a look that I can only explain as "please let it go." Her friends noticed and asked if she was okay. At this point, I decided to back off the subject. I walk her and her friends out of the bar and ask her where she parked her car. That was answered by her friend's high-pitched "Ha!" Rachel always parks under the street lamp. I don't remember for sure, but I'm fairly certain that she never made that effort before. Me and Rachel have made plans to hang out again. I don't know if it'll be like before, but I'm hopeful. As for knowing what Rachel heard, your guess is as good as mine. Number 2. This happened literally an hour ago. A bit of backstory. My mother had recently given me a 4-stroke lawnmower, though I don't know why, because my 2-stroke still works perfectly fine. As such, I don't have any oil for said new lawnmower. I needed to go to Miser anyway. I live in Michigan, so for those of you who don't live in the Great Lakes states, Miser is Walmart's largest regional competitor. Oddly, they didn't have any. No big deal. I thought I'd try the gas station, because I also needed cigarettes. As I pulled into the gas station and got out, a utility van pulled into the spot 2 spaces to the left of my truck. He gets out, and when he spots me, he smirks and says, "Nice truck." At first, I thought he was being sarcastic, because it's a 95 and has notable rust. "Thanks," I said as he walked to the gas station's bathroom, which can only be accessed from the outside. I walked inside, looked around, and giving up on getting oil for the day, I got cigarettes and left. I already have enough gas and oil for the 2-stroke to last through the season. As I was walking back to my truck, I heard the bathroom door open and slam shut behind me. I got in my truck, and before I even had the chance to close the door, the man was standing beside my open door, that smirk still plastered on his face. I had just turned 28 last week. I'm a guy, by the way, and even though I'm closer to 30, I still get ID'd at movie theaters. People say I look a solid decade younger than I actually am. I'm 5'8", about 150 pounds, and I have been in the military for going on 10 years, 6 years of which have been infantry and have 1 deployment under my belt, so even though I'm smaller than most people, I like to think I can hold my own. This guy, though, was about 6 foot, or 6'2", about 240 pounds of donuts, strawberry blonde hair, mostly hidden under a baseball cap, green eyes, and a mustache. He looked to be in his late 30s or early 40s. He was dressed in navy blue coveralls, which read the name Rudy. "Hey, nice truck," he said. This guy was definitely giving me a creepy vibe, and it was a strong vibe. I locked eyes with him. "Thanks," I replied. So, he put his hands in his pocket and started rocking on his heels. "Do you live around here?" I looked around to see if there was anyone around getting the same vibe I was. There was no one else. "No," I lied, locking eyes with him again. I didn't want to take my eyes off of him for more than 1 second. If he wanted to try something, he would be on me in the blink of an eye. I decided I would stick with the strategy of 1-word answers and unwavering eye contact, hoping he would get the hint that I wasn't interested in whatever he was into. He asked me what my name was. I certainly was not giving him my name. When put on the spot like that, my first instinct is to ask questions. The first that popped into my mind was, "What's yours?" Stupid, I know. "Rudy, so, do you like to party?" he replies. At first, I thought he was actually interested in the truck, since he commented on it twice. But now it was confirmed otherwise. "Nope," I said. "Okay," he said, as he started looking around. Not being able to take it anymore, I told him, "I gotta go." Without waiting for a response, I closed the door, started the truck, and noped it out of there. I lived 6 miles from that gas station, and the slowest I did was 10 over the entire way home. The one thing I didn't notice, for which I'm kicking myself right now, was how the utility van was marked. If I had, you bet I would have been on the phone immediately with the company. I was so focused on the guy and what he looked like, so paranoid that if I had looked away he would have tried something, that I didn't focus on anything else. So Rudy, I hope I never see you again. Number 1. I've been stalking this subreddit for a few months now and figured, what the hell, I have a fairly creepy story. First of all, this isn't going to be the most scary story in the world. It was just really fucking weird. I worked the night shift at a motel in a fairly small city in Oklahoma. We have a Walmart and a small college about 10 minutes away, so it's not tiny or anything. It's small enough that there's usually no reason to be creeped out about anyone you encounter here. So here I am, getting my laptop situated for the next 8 hours, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., and this 60 or 65-year-old lanky guy comes in and says he's a new employee, and I'm supposed to train him tonight. I'm awful at descriptions, but just know he didn't come off as creepy really. I remembered that I was training someone and mostly just think, shit, now I can't binge watch Buffy like I planned on. He comes around to the desk and I start giving him the basic rundown of the job. Do literally nothing besides check people in and print some papers out for the night audit later in the night. He comes off as generally nice, could hold a conversation but kind of slow. Like, almost slow enough to just call him dumb, but I just assumed he's the type of person that needed to do things a few times before getting the hang of it. I should mention that he had worked another shift previously, and my coworker said he wasn't the smartest person in the world, but figured he'd work out in the long run. After a while of bullshitting, joking around, watching Modern Family, and just getting to know each other, he asks if I'm married or not, to which I say no. He tells me he recently got a divorce, and it pretty much destroyed his life, hence the motel job. At around 2:30, he tells me that he forgot his heart medication, and asks if he can run home and get it. It's about a 5 or 10 minute drive away, he says. I tell him that wouldn't be a problem, and I figured since he was old and staying up until 7 in the morning, he might actually need that medication. Around 3 o'clock he comes back and immediately looks different. One of his eyes just won't open. It's like he's squinting with one eye the entire time, but trying really hard to open it. The first thing he asks was, "You got any rooms?" I think he's joking, so I try to laugh off his extremely unfunny joke. He comes around and sits next to me, and we decide to watch another episode of Modern Family together. Shortly into the episode, he starts talking about sex and asking me weird questions like, "Do you have sex?" and "Regularly?" At this point, I should give you a little description of myself. I'm a 23-year-old, ginger, pretty chubby gay guy. I'm pretty much one of the least attractive people you could ask for. Needless to say, I wasn't expecting what came next at all. He asks, "With whom do you have sex with?" It being Hicktown and all, and trying to be discreet, I say, with friends. He then asked if I was gay, but I said no. He keeps going on about sex and then tells me he likes guys, to which I reply, and still with no red flags popping up in my head, "Oh, hey, me too." At this point, he is noticeably acting strange. Textbook drunk behavior like slouching and just freezing in that position for an extended period of time, losing focus and looking like he just needs to take a nap. Again, no red flags pop up because I just think he's having some sort of reaction to his medicine. I ask him if he's okay, and he says that he's not feeling very well, and that he is, indeed, having a strange reaction to the medicine. I ask him if I should ask my managers to come pick him up, but he refuses, and this is when I realize that shit's not right, but still, I just want to get through the night shift, and we can get help in the morning. A few minutes later, I look over, and he makes eye contact with me. He gives a little nod as if to say, "Come here." I look back at my computer, and when I turn my head, he's a little closer, reaching his hand out. He then literally asks, "You wanna..." I'm just like, "No, sorry, I can't do that at work." He shuts up for a second and then asks, "Why don't you..." I perk up. "What? Flash me your ass or something?" I'm still not fully recognizing here that this needs to stop as soon as possible, and I just flat out tell him, "No, you're clearly fucked up on something. Let's just make it through the night and we'll figure this out in the morning." He responds by rolling his chair over and touches my fucking thigh. I pull away with a little laugh and say something like, "Look, man, I don't want to call the managers, but I will." Look, man, I don't want to call the managers, but I will. Stop. He looks a little shaken up and rolls back over. And about a minute later, he fucking does it again. Only this time, it was like he was trying to be sneaky about it. I stand up and tell him I have to pee. In truth, I went to the back storage area, locked the door, called the manager, and told him the situation. Obviously, he said something to the effect of, "Oh shit, call the police." I'm not a physical specimen by any means, but I wasn't physically intimidated by him one bit. I think that's what made me so lax about it. I called the police, and they said they'd be right over, although they sounded super confused. I make my way back out to the desk to check on him, and the motherfucker is gone. I checked everywhere on the first floor, but he was nowhere to be found. Then I looked outside the glass doors. In the dark, I couldn't tell who it was, but someone was on all fours in the parking lot. I walked out to find him weeping and holding his broken glasses, and there was a huge blood spatter right in front of him. I don't know exactly how it happened, but I assume he simply slipped, or passed out, and fell flat on his face on the concrete. His face was all bloodied up, and he clearly couldn't function. So I helped him up, walked him to the couch in the lobby, cleaned him off with a wet rag, and sat him down. He kept asking me for a room, but after a few times I said, "Sure, I'll get you a room. I'll get it in a few minutes." The cops showed up about 5 minutes later, questioned him and I, and took him to jail for the night. They didn't tell me much, but from what I could gather, they had apparently had to deal with this guy multiple times, and he clearly had some issues. And then it was over. I told all of my friends, family, and coworkers the next day, and all of them seemed really sketched out, but to me, he was just some creepy old gay dude. He'd lived in denial for so long that something snapped, and he didn't know how to live with himself. I never felt threatened during the night. It was just a profoundly weird experience. Of course, had I been a girl or a smaller guy, I might have freaked out a little harder. The creepiest part, though, and I mentioned this to a cop as he was leaving, while the guy was going on his drunken rant about sex and gayness, he very clearly stated, "And I like kids. I don't know how to stop."